Hey, what's going on, guys? I'm Chris, and this is Regular Guy Training. So, it is that time of year. We are starting to take off the coats, most of us, and we're starting to push our way through the spring months. It is the height of allergy season. We are making our way towards the summer months. We're dealing with a plague, and at the same time, a lot of us are getting ready to go take training. So, as the I see a lot, a lot of brand new names as far as my roster and that kind of stuff is concerned as we lead into that whole thing. And as we work our way toward that, what we do have to understand is that there are things that we have to manage as far as just different environments and that kind of stuff is concerned. Understanding for sure that some of you are going to need some of this stuff more than others. Some of you spend your whole lives outside, and some of you are barely outside, and that's fine. Like we have different walks of life and that kind of thing. So that's number one. And number two, what is actually kind of funny is that a lot of guys that spend a ridiculous amount of time outside learn things based off of just the performance stuff that we kind of push, and the things that we encourage and don't encourage and that kind of stuff as time goes on. So, I'm just going to list a bunch of stuff here and whatever. And I highly suggest having the vast majority of the stuff on board. There are a few things that I would consider mandatory if I'm going to go take a class in like Florida or someplace. A southern state, for instance, in the summer is going to be fucking hot and humid and all that other crap, right? So here's a lot of stuff that I see. And a lot of times I will bring more of this stuff just for me because I have to make sure that my brain is functioning at peak performance the entire time, regardless of what's happening. And a lot of that stuff will make its way to the students because you'll see a lot of guys show up with just not a lot of this stuff. So, first thing, let's talk. I may swing back to it, but let's talk about the consumables and that kind of thing first. The first thing that you're absolutely going to want is at least a personal case of water. You would be shocked how much water a lot of people will bleed out and take in when it's hot as hell outside. So at least a personal case of water. Now, me and one or two other people that decide, to teach a class and that kind of stuff, we're going through pretty close to or more than a case of water a day, depending on where we are. So you're going to need that. You have to replenish a lot of the fluids that come out, but the water itself is not the only thing that you have to replace because you're sweating a whole bunch of crap out of your body when you do that. So here's the thing, right? What I also highly suggest is a bunch of this stuff. Pedialyte. This isn't just a hangover cure, guys, and one of the reasons why it is pretty good for hangovers and that kind of stuff is that it replenishes a frightening number of minerals in your body that you bleed out. Gatorade and that kind of stuff, it works to a point because it will replenish a lot of the stuff that you're draining out of your body, but nowhere near to the same amount. And at the same time, what's cool about these, especially these little packets of stuff, is that you can double up on them depending on how dehydrated you are from the night before, right? So it really depends. But here's the thing, right? And I love this story because the first time I went to the Full Spectrum Warrior Range down in Paisley, Florida, right? We're sitting here just kind of like, yo, this stuff is great. You feel like a brand new person. You could really be sucking, and then the second that you knock out a bottle of water loaded with this crap in it, you feel much better. You can think clearer, that kind of stuff. And it's kind of funny because we had a guy there that listened to us say that for sure, and it just in his mind, he wasn't being disrespectful out loud, but it just in his mind, he's sitting there like, man, I am a grown ass man. Who the fuck are you to try and serve me some baby water? Day 3, actually 4. They're sitting there milling about, loading magazines, doing their thing, and me and my buddy Travis are setting up a drill, and we hear that. we hear that story coming out of him where he's talking to other people, but he led that off with, guys, I just had a half bottle of water full of this stuff and I feel like a brand new person. And then he's like, yeah, when he first told me this, and he starts going on that whole thing, right? So of course his name is Baby Water Forever now. And the funny thing is that the first time that he tried it, instant believer, like you feel it happen immediately. And being honest, I don't care about you going down from dehydration in a class. I don't. Because I care about all the stuff that's happening beforehand that is arguably quite a bit more dangerous. If you go down in a class, I can get you IV'd. I can get stuff in your body. But you were handling loaded guns beforehand. And before you go down, your processing power is ass. Your ability to manipulate objects and deal with things is ass. And that's the part. You start making stupid mistakes that you know better than to make before you go down. And that's what I'm worried about. It's not whether or not you go down. I can take care of a dehydrated person. It's all the other stuff that was happening beforehand, the long list of things that are wrong beforehand that we need to pay attention to. Because when you start getting that dehydrated, all kinds of horrible things can happen before, which is why we want to stay on top of it. We want to make sure that we're constantly keeping our body as hydrated as possible. You know, I started carrying around one of these so I can hook it on to stuff and I can just carry it forever. And it's just got all kinds of crap in it that I can use to replenish my body other than just the water. Because while that's important, that's just a component. That's one component of all the other things that your body needs to function correctly, right? So this is a pretty good solve. Now, if I was to ratio this, right, like after your body has been is efficiently hydrated, right? It's basically one of these per 3 bottles of water, which a lot of students that are watching this are just kind of like, yeah, okay, that's about right, because you just suck the shit out of water the whole time that you're there. You're just constantly destroying bottles of water while you're there and that kind of stuff. So a way to think about it too is carrying one of these makes it easier to put all those chemicals and crap in, and at the same time you're also able to monitor how much water you're taking in, because a lot of times there will be measurements for that, right? To where it's different when you're sitting there, you know, taking out a bottle of water and then you take in some of this stuff and then you realize that you haven't been drinking anywhere near enough because you hadn't gotten through a single, in this case, 24-ounce bottle of water all day. I have to get stuff in my body or retarded crap's gonna happen. Does that make sense? So there you go. And I know I spent a lot of time on that, but we're still not even done with it, because what you really want to do, look, I understand that people live and die by caffeine. I'm just now laying off this stuff a lot, right? And there are occasions where I still have to pop tops on certain things. What I found over time is that Monster is like the worst, the absolute worst for you. Like across the board, everything Monster is the absolute worst for you. And when I say other things are better, it's really not that much better, really. But it's not as bad. And we're talking about stuff like Rain and what you call it, and Bang, that kind of stuff. All of this tastes like butt, and all of it's at long term and short term pretty bad for you, especially if it's like 1,000,000 degrees outside. You're not drinking water and you're slamming this stuff instead. You can accelerate how fast your brain turns to shit. So you really, really, really have to watch that stuff. And I'm at the point where it's like, I may knock out a can of this stuff in the morning if I have to shotgun my brain into working order, and then I'm done with it after that. It's pretty self-explanatory at that point. So there you go. A cooler and ice. Do you need this stuff? Or do you need that stuff? No, but it's absolutely a quality of life enhancement to drink just cooler water. That comes with an asterisk though, to where if you're starting to get overheated and you have to wash your friggin', pour water physically on you. You do not want ice water to do that if you feel yourself getting overheated. Because the temperature changes depending on if it's truly hot outside. The temperature changes could actually really fuck with your metabolic system, and in some really extreme, I mean really extreme cases, you can begin a shock process. But there's a long list of things that had to have gone wrong beforehand. Like, you already have to be within heat exhaustion. You already have to be so dehydrated that we're concerned about you. All of that other stuff. So there's that. But something that you can use, and this just kind of helps with a lot of different things, is that if you bring like a wash rag, that kind of stuff, you take. Okay, so basically, like half of this stuff, like half of the rag goes into like the ice water, a new one goes into the ice water, the other half gets room temperature water, and then you just stack that right along your neck area. You're already melted, okay, so you're not worried about being wet anymore. And this can help just to bring you down over time, and it's not as much of a shock. An application of a rag is nowhere near a shock to the system as just like a whole bunch of water onto the head and that kind of stuff. So that is a way that helps a lot of that out. And it's a way to just kind of regulate that body temperature, especially if you're a type that is just not used to that kind of heat, because Florida or Mississippi and Tennessee and places like that will fuck with people that are snowbirds, that are just not out in this that are just not outside like this long. So there you go. Another quality of life improvement, actually two big ones that really do help. If you're the person that brings the 10 by 10, the freaking canopies that you can just set up, and just for collective shade and that kind of stuff, you put them over the top of the tables that we put all the equipment and everything at, and always, every time, you are 1000% welcome to do that. That does come with its own level of risk. Guys that use them a lot already know. Wind takes things. Bring your stakes. Beat them into place. We'll help keep it down and that kind of stuff too. So, guys that bring them, 1000% welcome to do that. I'm not going to complain about more shade outside. You know what I mean? That and chairs. Like the little fold-up chairs, or the little tiny, or the little tiny ones. You'd be amazed how easy it is to get your mind right again when you go to sit down into some shade with even a little tiny chair. You go over your notes a little bit while you're loading mags, and you crank down a cold bottle of Pedialyte followed by a regular bottle of water. You just feel like a whole new person, and this is 10 minutes. You know what I mean? So those are little quality of life improvements that really, really do help. Oh, by the way, as you start to tick all these things off, or go to find in your house places, because we do have courses that are coming up fairly soon, like a 5-gallon plastic bucket that you can just throw all this shit in, just like range stuff, that you can put all the small stuff in. You don't have to gather it up and just your hands are doing this. If you just throw all this stuff in a bucket and just bring it out, it makes life so much easier, just for you. One thing that wasn't like required a while ago, just because I'm younger and all of that stuff, like just the soldiering mind is just kind of like, I don't care about that. But over the years, I've started to really understand its significance, just for how ass you can feel if you don't do this. Unless you're of like super duper dark complexion, sunblock. Like, I'm a browner person, right? But I know that since I mostly haven't seen the sun in months, just because it's perpetually wet from fall through winter, I'm lighter than I was. So wherever I go that's outside for a while, I'm going to get burned. And if it's hot, like we feel physically closer to the sun, hot outside, just that first day that you're out there, you get good and crispy. You feel like you've been put into an oven, and you're just sucking. You're putting up with that, and it feels like you just have a headache forever. It sucks, okay? So if you can, I'm not going to say that you won't get burned, because that's some bullshit. You're probably getting burned, especially if you're like a pasty person, right? You're probably getting burned. But it makes it less ass to deal with just over the course of the amount of time that we're out there, because we're going to pull hours while we're outside, guys. I don't really have breaks. The most valuable break that you're going to have is when everybody is coming back to load magazines, because once that's done, you may have a minute or two if I'm talking to somebody or answering a question or just talking a bunch of shit, and then we go back to work. Like, it's pretty constant. So having the little quality of life enhancements here is really gonna it's really gonna save you a lot of headache. In some cases, literally. So there it is, right? Off, like the spray or any equivalent that works, because I'll tell you what, you know, Florida, for instance, may not have the fucking needle bats that Tennessee and Mississippi have. Mosquitoes the size of bats. So, for those of you that didn't get that joke, uh, um, but there are bazillions of them. There's so many fucking mosquitoes. It's ridiculous. So, two things: a bunch of off, and when it gets dark, starting to cover yourself more. Like if you have thin long sleeve, right? You might be a little warmer at the moment, but I'll take a little warmer, even though the sun went down. I'll take a little warm and still sweating over constantly beating the shit out of myself trying to kill all these bugs. And a lot of times, just a lot of people just get over it, and they're just like, fuck it, and they just sit there and just get killed, right? Because we do night shoots. So if you're signed up for, like, for instance, Pistol 1 and 2, there are 2 night shoots that will be done. First day of Pistol 1, first day of Pistol 2. So in that 4-day span, you'll be in the dark twice, and the bugs are coming. They're coming. So bring off and that kind of stuff. During the day, especially the morning, ticks will fuck with you. So what I personally do is I apply the off in the morning too, and I get the sock line. I make sure that my shoes get it. I'm at every crease. I mean, the shirt, the sleeves, the underside of the shirt, and that kind of stuff. In the waist area, right at the pants. I get anywhere that ticks like to go into, and I make sure that I get those areas, because ticks suck. So that's another thing that we have to deal with too, because we're outside, and especially in southern states, holy shit, deer ticks will mess you up if you let them. So there's that. Here's the thing, and these are the little things that you want to be aware of too, right? Make sure your ear pro are actually dead. They may have just auto shut off. Like, there are a million times that this has happened where guys will be like, shit, I need to set a AAA's because my thing is dead. And they'll come to find out later that they were never dead. They just auto shut off, right? So if it starts to beep a whole bunch, and then that long pause and they shut off, most of them are similar, you probably just got either you got to touch something or anything as far as a button or a switch or whatever. Some of them require you to turn them off. You can hear them reset, and then you can turn them back on. Make sure they're actually dead before you start going through your batteries. Batteries are expensive, so you want to make sure that you're doing that and that you're not taking time out from literally the million other things that you could be doing. I'm not even talking about the curriculum and stuff. You could just be sitting down, right? But from the million other things that you could be doing instead of dealing with these batteries. You see what I'm saying? And here's the thing, too. EarPro tends to die very rarely. Like, legitimately kill batteries very rarely. Like, I live in these fucking things, and it's so rare when I have to actually change my batteries out. But I have been faked out before about whether or not, they're alive. So, just a thing to consider. I know for some people it sounds like I'm insulting their intelligence, but, especially for new people, this is something that, you haven't been on a range for 12 hours before. Something like that. So yeah, that. Next thing, consolidate your trash. This is a 2-parter. One, if you don't have like ammo cans to put that stuff into, which I get, a lot of people are on like shoestring budgets coming out here. Okay, cool. Just take all the smaller boxes, like the individual account boxes, Take all those out of the large cardboard box that fucking thing shipped in, and dump all that loose ammo into that cardboard box. Because there's just less stuff to do now, and there's less trash for you to deal with while you're there. Also, while you're there, you might want to fuck around and grab some trash bags, right? I've had to police up a bunch of stuff from ranges. It just kind of comes with the territory and that kind of thing. And when another guy shows up with a roll of trash bags, it's a godsend. It absolutely helps. And those of you that do bring them out, thanks. But I encourage that too, just because it's just less of a cleanup process. By the end of this 2 to 4 days, you are zapped. Like, you are done. Okay? The last thing that you need to do is fuck about and pick up a whole bunch of trash. Just make sure that you stay on top of it and bring stuff to the range to deal with it too, because you're going to go through a lot of crap. Okay? Here's the thing. Mark your magazines, your name, or some tape, right? Some tape that you know is yours. I'm going to steer people away from flat colors like orange or green tape, because other people are doing that. Tape that you'll use with like a pattern or something on it. A lot of people have made the ducks on duct tape, like super famous, because I've seen the ducks that I put on a lot of my magazines, and they started coming out with ducks on their fucking magazines. I'm like, what are you doing? We're using the same gun. So after a while, I have to like outthink that and do the name only and that kind of stuff. But point is, a way to mark your magazines will make sure that everybody has a crap before they leave. In the 3 years that I've been doing this by myself, right, we probably had 2 magazines get left behind. And most of the time, I'll call that dude or text him or send him an email or whatever and be like, hey, you left this, and he doesn't give a shit, right? Because he's got like 14 million magazines. But in the years that we've been operating this company, we've had like 2 mags get left behind. Yeah, we'll make sure you get your crap back. So there's that. Yeah, bring tools for your guns, that kind of stuff. It should be self-explanatory, but stuff breaks, man. We've had people replace parts on fly. So bring tools. Bring a spare gun too, in case something really important that you cannot replace there does break. So that it's kind of important. Here's the thing too, as far as training and that kind of stuff. I know you want to like test stuff. I do. I really do. I thoroughly understand that, right? But make sure that you can have, especially for handguns, make sure that you have that gun's factory magazines. Have a bunch of those, like at least 4, so that you can lean on those to get through the course. Because if you decide that you're going to test a set of magazines from this place, from somewhere, right, and then they utterly fail you, you have stuff to lean on now. Does that make sense? There should be no such thing as a training bag only for you, really. And I'm not a fan of companies that produce range magazines, because what they're really telling you is that these are crappy magazines that are not going to take anything outside of sterile conditioning, as far as just whether or not they'll work. So I'm not a fan of that at all. But for those of you that have a difference in quality or want to test something, I totally understand that too. Make sure that you have factory magazines to lean on, because I've handed out an inordinate number of factory magazines to people. And while I don't mind doing that, what I do mind is a guy that showed up with like 18 magazines, Glock mags from Magpul, and now they're all dead because we're in Florida, and Florida doesn't like factory magazines. Those guns barely work, so anything that's sub that just doesn't work anymore, right? And now you're down to like 2 carry mags. That's a problem. We need to at least be able to make it through the course with shit that works. Does that make sense? Because Florida sugar sand eats everything, just as a for instance, right? So there's that. Then just mud and rainwater and all kinds of other crap. Just make sure that you're good with stuff that will make it. Oh yeah. If there are range fees that are posted on the website, most of the time there are because we travel everywhere. But if you see range fees and that kind of stuff, just make sure that you have the stuff in cash, like on hand and that kind of stuff, so it just gets handled. You don't have to worry about anything else. You don't have to, after this 12-hour to 24-hour ass whooping that you've got, you don't have to worry about going out at lunch to an ATM or some shit and getting them. You can just handle it on the spot and it's done, right? So that way we can focus more on just training rather than having to remember anything else. Does that make sense? Okay, now those of you that carry like Advil, Zyrtec, that kind of stuff, you need to know what the limitations of that kind of stuff are. I understand it. It's the height of allergy season right now. I'm getting hit by some of it. You probably heard a little bit of it. So yeah, like I'll bring Zyrtec to places like this. Um, just pay attention. I mean, all medications have certain risk factors and that kind of stuff. We all know what's going on as far as medically speaking, as far as the entire country. Pay attention to what the fuck it is that's going on with that particular medication and your body. Make sure you understand side effect issues. Make sure you understand dosing issues, and don't fuck yourself over. I can only be vague like that because people are different across the board, right? So if I were to put out like this very straightforward statement on something like a vagary that is any kind of like over-the-counter medication for particular things that you're dealing with. Okay, moving on. Body parts that are broken or hurt, that kind of stuff, right? We got a lot of guys that come through here with crappy knees because they know that my knees are absolute trash and that my rotator cuff is fucked up and stuff like that. I need to know if your body parts hurt. I need to know if you've had big injuries in the past, right? Like we've had athletes come through and they've had ACL issues before, right? Just as a for instance. I need to know that shit, and I need to know where you are in the recovery process for that, because my intent is not to break your body, it's to sell you tools that you can go train back at the house, right? Usually at the beginning of the class, we're starting to get to know each other and all that other stuff. I need to know if you have body part issues, and I will generally ask that question: who's got body part breakage problems, right? If it is something else, like I have had a surgery or something, right? And you're wondering whether or not you'll be good to go to take a class, I'm going to be honest with you. If you've had a surgery that's invasive and that requires recovery time and that kind of stuff, what I would thoroughly recommend is listen to the doc. Recover first before you come and take a class with us, okay? If you have some sort of outlying medical issue like an amputation or something, okay, cool, we can work with that. That's not a big deal. It's when we have things that you went under the knife for. I can't make a lot of calls on those things, man. So what I would say is, if you're asking me whether or not it's okay for you to come to a course because you've had surgeries and that kind of thing, yeah, I'm going to go case by case, right? Because if it's something fairly small, like fairly small is a relative term. But yeah, I mean, like we could sit there and talk about it and do the case by case. But what I'm generally going to tell people is recover, man. Go to PT, get fucked up by that nurse or whoever it is, finish that, finish the recovery time, get back to yourself or close to yourself before you come out and train. Because focusing on how broken as shit, whatever it is versus what the information is that we're pushing out to guys, you can understand how that's a conflict, right? So just pay attention to that. But if you show up to class and it's just like a pre-existing thing, like, okay, my knees are kind of rough, I've had it replaced or whatever, right? Or I've got a banged up rotator cuff, that kind of stuff. I need to know that so that if I see you getting up kind of slow, I know why. And if we need to take countermeasures to make sure that you don't hurt yourself, like for real, okay, cool, we can do that. So there it is. Now, big one, undershirts, especially for like pistol classes where guys are going concealed and that kind of thing. Look, you have to understand undershirts are either really going to help you or they could kill you. Okay? if you're going to wear an undershirt and that kind of stuff, look, the things that I steer away from are old undershirts, okay? And looser fitting undershirts, shirts that like to come out from underneath a belt line, right? So, like, for instance, if a wife beater's getting kind of used and it starts to feel like a friggin' napkin now, it's gone. I'm not carrying that thing. I'm not carrying a gun with that thing. I'm not even putting it in my drawers anymore, right? Like, that's in the trash. It's gone because I carry a gun every day. I thoroughly understand wanting to have that layer in there and that kind of stuff, because just sitting there and dealing with that sweaty mess between the Kydex and the gun, it's annoying as hell. But having that there can actually kill the fuck out of you if you're using, again, that old ass loose fitting, likes to come out of the waistband shirt, right? What I personally suggest for a lot of, I'm going to be out here forever type stuff, and I know it's going to be hot, and I know I'm carrying a gun too, and I know I'm likely to use that gun. Okay, what I personally do is I start going to places like Under Armour, or I'll go to an academy, like a store, right? And I'll find a moisture wicking shirt out of the same kind of material that's like compression material, and I'll wear that underneath, just like my Jurassic Park shirt, right? Because it's a no snag material. It is actually pretty good at moisture wicking things, right? So there's multiple benefits to that. And I know, especially if it comes in good and form-fitted against the waist, it's not going to try and dig itself up while I'm pulling this shirt out of the way going for a gun. Does that make sense? And I'm not having to constantly monitor it, even though I do, because I'm a paranoid fuck. But you see what I'm getting at, right? So there are just a lot of things in there that could help you with that. But I think I've gone on and rambled on enough about a lot of this. Just the considerations to make, man, because the stuff that you have to bring is already listed on the website. Some of this is actually on the website, but a lot of this is just stuff that, it's helped people increase quality of life while you're out there. I mean, if you want to go out there and suck, that's fine. I will never, ever, ever underestimate my student body's willingness to come out and get fucked up, right? Because a lot of times we will intentionally go to places during the worst time of the year for that location, right? Like dead of winter Maine for a rifle. That was ass. Or absolute, we're inside of like Satan's living room, hell, hot as shit, plus a whole bunch of humidity, Mississippi. We do this on purpose every once in a while to give people the opportunities to go and train in really, like, just not permissive environments. Like, they're pretty shit to be out in all day, right? And then you still have to do what you got to do. You still got to process. You still got to handle guns correctly and all that stuff, right? But while we're doing it, we take all of these precautions, and we're constantly watching you and reading body language to see if your fucking brain is starting to blue screen. Does that make sense? So, I've gone on enough. If you want to come out and train with us, you absolutely can. I've talked nothing but that since I started this video. Link for that is in the description below. Here's the thing, as far as Facebook and all that, and Patreon and that kind of stuff, links for those are in the description below. You can read through that. You can figure out how you can spend $41 a month to train with us as much as you want to, because that's gone up from $35. But and a lot of the money that we make from Patreon and that kind of stuff actually goes towards the bajillions of bullets that we're shooting through guns, giving you solid reviews. We're also training up troops, taking them out from, the army, like army life, which is really square and stupid most of the time. And we expose them to this, and it's without cost to them, that kind of thing. And again, I'm gonna thank people for sticking with us through this nonsense that we're dealing with. And yes, it's nonsense because disease has killed people since fucking always, especially those with high risk and that kind of stuff. And it's been highly infectious since always too. So while we're dealing with all this nonsense, I am absolutely shocked that so many, I've made money on Patreon. Like, people have come on and threw money at us during this whole thing. And that shocks the shit out of me. It really does. Because things are getting harder for a lot of folks. And the simple fact that this is happening is it's another one of those things that makes me understand exactly how serious this is for a lot of people. And I'm not going to let off the gas as long as I'm doing this. So, I appreciate you guys wholeheartedly. I mean, you have no idea. I appreciate everything that you're doing. You consistently make me the luckiest guy in the room because I haven't had a real job in a few years, right? And while I'm sitting here lucky as hell not having that job, I'm going to break my back to get you what you need. Whether it's information on this or whether it's on range, I'm going to do what I got to do. So, remember guys, a regular guy's firearm is the last defense against tyranny. Be easy.